Whenever I feel morose or cranky, I get out my old map of Shropshire, which was bequeathed to me by dear old Bud, and take a large dose. At first, my eyes just wandered dully over the brown, the pink and the green, taking nothing in. Then, something takes their fancy, the potion begins to work, like oil on troubled waters, and before long I am again in happy possession of a contented mind. Why Shropshire? Well, perhaps any one of a dozen others might do. Might. But of Shropshire there is no doubt, no possible doubt whatever. And now, having sailed again into peaceful waters, my old Bart's sheet 17 reminds me I haven't told you about a last autumn weekend, which I hope will interest you. On the first Sunday in October, I had a date with a walker, a motorist, a policeman, and a BBC microphone in much Wenlock. All the ingredients for a first-class row, you might think, but nothing of the sort. All I had to do was to go and enjoy myself on a bicycle, then turn up at a certain pub in time for tea, afterwards to gossip with the others about what we had been up to, while somebody in London put it on record. Yes, now and again life is very pleasant, brother, and I know you will believe me when I say I put Wolverhampton behind me that Saturday, feeling very pleased with the world at large, all warm inside like, especially as a clearing mist gave promise of a beautiful day. The Bridgnorth Road is one of my oldest friends. In 25 years it has had one or two corners ironed out, but there are still plenty left. It waggles about and rolls up and down as youthfully as ever, which is, alas, more than can be said of myself. On this occasion I must award the palm to a corner at Roughton, an old brick house on the right, draped in the blood-red leaves of the Virginia creeper, a chestnut in front, turned bright yellow with the aging year, a sort of rich fruit-cake mixture. It would be worth making an annual autumn appointment with Roughton just to see that, I thought. It was easy going, so I toddled slowly up to the top of Hermitage Hill without a dismount, then got off to smoke and looked down on Old Bridgnorth, still wreathed about with mist. From my feet a steep bracken sloped down to a cemetery, cupped in the green hillside and the hidden river. Beyond, a medley of buildings rising to a chimney-pot silhouette dominated by the classic Tower of St Mary's, a creation of that extraordinarily versatile engineer Thomas Telford, so well known to cyclists who love their roads and want to know all about them. Then down I went to the low town, crossed the river, walked up Castle Hill into the marketplace, and looked about for lunch. Do you know Bridgnorth Marketplace, with its old half-timbered town hall on the top of stone arches? It is one of those domestic scenes which somehow makes you feel proud of England. Not proud in any assertive sense, but quietly, convincingly proud of a possession that you flinch from bragging about, yet secretly congratulate yourself on having there to admire when you feel like it and to comfort you when you need it. Lunch was rather an expensive affair at the principal hotel, but I had two talkatively interesting table companions. In any case, I felt this was a weekend on which I could afford to do myself well, And just as a good traveller will want to go everywhere and see everything, so we really want to rub shoulders with all people. You know, the idea in housing estates is not to segregate the Smiths and the Smythes, and by the same token, I think we cyclists might very well expand our exclusiveness to give less fortunate folk the benefit of our outlook on life, and to do that, you've got to talk to them. That way, I think we shall do them good, and possibly win their respect and regard for a game which hitherto they may have rated as very small beer. However, we'd better be getting on the road. Bridgenorth has spilled a few houses out on the Tasley side. I suppose they put them there to get in the sun a bit better. But one soon finishes with all that, and it was very pleasant indeed rolling along through Morville and Monkhopton into the Vale of Corve. Before leaving home, I had mentally noted one or two things to be done. It's the only way thoroughly to explore an English countryside. And one of these was Shipton Hall. How I wish I had the courage to go up to the front doors of these lovable old places and say, "Do you mind if I wander round your premises a bit?" Usually all we can do is to take a distant view or surreptitious close-ups, and I'm sure the old colonel, or whatever he might be, would often be delighted to show us round, even inside, as happened one memorable day when we were doing Pitchford Hall from the park gates half a mile away. "Would you like to see the old place?" suddenly said a voice at our backs, and we took the whole mob of us down the long drive to get on intimate terms with one of the most beautiful timbered mansions in Shropshire, and that's saying a lot. No friendly voice surprised me on this occasion, so I went through the adjoining churchyard to get a closer look at Shipton's twisted chimneys and 16th century gabled front, with windows that look out across the green trench of Corvedale to the bold bastion of Brownlee. The next item was Upper Millichope, snuggled in one of those little transverse dells so delightfully a feature of the Wenlock Edge country. All of them are worth knowing, and between Craven Arms and Much Wenlock there are 7 at least. At Upper Millichope I was looking for the oldest inhabited house in the county. At one time Wenlock Edge was covered by the Long Forest, and here lived the King's Forester 800 years ago. My clues were that it adjoined modern farm premises and was entered by a round-headed doorway. Well, I soon found the farm premises, and after nosing into the farmyard I found the round-headed doorway. But I thought, if this is all, then I'm not impressed. What was inside? With a great effort I screwed up sufficient courage to knock at the door, and Mrs. Edwards graciously permitted me to go in. What a nuisance it must be to live in a famous house. Only the ground floor of the old house is now used as a kitchen, the upper stories being sadly in need of repair, the floors rotting, inner walls of wattle and daub falling to pieces, great oaken beams worm-eaten, and roof giving way. The lower walls are 6 feet thick, tapering off slightly towards the roof, and the upper stories are gained by a corkscrew staircase in one corner of the kitchen opposite the great open fireplace. Just then Mrs. Edwards had been busy making piccalilli, and the pungent smell of it made my mouth water. but I came away saddened to know that such an irreplaceable treasure was being allowed to fall into rack and ruin. I continued up the dell and over the edge at Roman Bank, so named because this is where the Romans are believed to have cut their road between Uriconium, the great city on the banks of the River Severn, 5 miles from Shrewsbury, and Nordybank, a fortified outpost on the western slopes of the Brown Clee, from which it is suggested they control communications through Corbdale. But that sort of information is only interesting if you have an imagination capable of dealing with it entertainingly. For Roman Bank now is no different in appearance to any other crossing of the edge. It is far different from another small section of the same road between Lower Chatwall and Oakley, known as the Devil's Causeway. For there the paving stones are still in position. You have something to look at. Nevertheless, I must admit to some satisfaction in merely traversing the line of an old road, modernised or not, and I'm a firm believer in seeing for oneself. It's a very steep descent to Apedale, with the fine outlines of the Stretton Hills facing one in the near distance, and at the foot of the hill one comes into Rushbury, where, if you turn down the little path by the side of the cottage on the left, you will find hidden away a tiny pack-horse bridge over the stream, no more than 4.5 feet wide by 5 paces long, but as exquisite an example of the art of arch building as any I have ever seen. There are no parapets, so that the beauty of the arch stands fully revealed in all its perfect simplicity. The map marks an unmetalled road from this point southwards over the edge to Diddlebury, or Delbury as they call it, in Corbdale. I wonder if this was a pack-horse variant of the Roman road later partly used on a medieval route from Shrewsbury to Ludlow. One of these fine days, dry days, I must try it out with the aid of a large billhook. It's so overgrown. Rushbury has a fortress-like church tower and a beautiful half-timbered manor house too, but I left these for the morrow, being now thirsting for tea. This I found at the Plough Inn, Wall under Hayward, a CTC house well beloved of our clan in Shropshire, and having booked my lunch for the following day, I soon set off again on the road for Marshbrook and Little Stretton, where I had a bed waiting for me at a farm. I was wondering what sort of a farm it would be, for the term covers a multitude of sins, and what sort of a bed. Unknown lodgings. It's a mild form of gambling which may or may not add spice to your travels. To me, it is an infallible bait. Road is the Hereford-Shrewsbury, and is there a lovelier bit on it than the mile or so about Marshbrook? There the hills hug it tightly, squeezing road, rail and stream, cheek by cheek. Not a wild bit, bold hills true, but smoothly rounded, well clothed in verdure, as beautiful as a woman. I dropped a foot on the grass verge the better to admire. It was far too lovely to take on the wing. Then I went slowly up the road in search of my farm lodgings. I was hoping it would be tucked away somewhere quiet in the hills, perhaps up one of those footpath valleys. They go by the name of Batch or Hollow, where streams have eaten back deeply into the great flanks of the Longmynd. And for once in a way the gods were kind, though, strangely enough, I had not thought of a sheep farm. They told me at the pub where it was, and I found myself following a narrow roadlet by the side of a stream, tinkling and tumbling down its pebbly bed. How fresh everything seemed. I mean, the freshness of a May morning. Then I had to cross the stream by a plank bridge, or ride through it, and there was the farmhouse, quite small, like a cottage, some part stone and some part timber, black timbers and whitewashed walls, and the roof, bless me, I couldn't swear to it now, whether it was thatched or not. I think it was. What a lot of things we look at and yet don't see. The place was guarded by geese, and behind the geese there was a second line of defence, dogs. At the approach of a stranger they combined to repel the common foe. Otherwise they whiled away the time, defying each other, and the row they kicked up was enough to disturb the shade of Caractacus and his cave 3 miles away. And during short intervals the air was filled with the music of a tributary stream flowing past the front door. Under the low eaves I went to bed within a few yards of it, with a tiny latticed window open to the night, and it lulled me to sleep. Old worn furniture, discoloured walls, odours, oil lamps, dark corners. I thought the missus wouldn't like this. It reminded me of Rogue Harris and his tumble-down home in far-away Cumberland. Slatternly, perhaps the right word, but it rose native from the rock and the stream. It had grown there, and the people who were in it belonged there too. Home and folk neither ate the rustic nor offended the soul of the place with alien airs. In the gloaming I walked up the hollow, criss-crossing the stream as the rocks and the path commanded. One of those walks where you feel you must go on until you come out on the top. But the light wouldn't hold out, and I had to turn back with the hills still shutting me in. Back by the fire I talked and smoked with the farmer, learned how it was common pasture on the Longmynd for farmers of Stretton-en-Lydale, that is Church Stretton, All Stretton and Little Stretton, learned of the sheep being brought down for the lambing, for the washing and shearing in June, for the dipping and counting in August and November, learned that the wethers were sold to lowland farmers for fattening, and the ewes kept for breeding, and, oh, good gracious, how the time flies. Better get off to bed. Next morning was warm and fine. I set off by a little road across the toes of the hills, first to have a look at Minton, where there was a Saxon mound surrounded by a great ditch and a village green with the homes of its rude forefathers scattered round a close circle within the protection of their chief, just as in Saxon times. But an unfriendly sheepdog sniffed and growled on my heels all the way across the green, and it would have looked odd to the group of farm hands watching my knickerbockered progress with ill-concealed amusement if I had loitered about. so I shall have to go again. I'd like to stand on the top of that mound. I regained the main road at Marsbrook and followed it south as far as Upper Ascot, where a PRHA inn set me to thinking covetously of more weekends in Shropshire. This would suit the missus, I thought, and if she was too lazy to ride, we could leave her parked on the lawn in the sun, dreaming of fine frocks and tall gallants in evening dress. For the moment, however, I'd better think about getting toward much Wenlock. So I started following a byway up Apedale, the wooded hills of the edge on my near right, crowned by a tower of which I knew nothing. Seeing an old chap propping up a gate, I asked him about it, but as soon as he turned his countenance upon me, I knew I'd made a false move. If he wasn't a tramp, then he ought to have been one. His large face was the colour of old red brick dust, and it was framed in a circular border of bushman's whiskers. Clothes even worse than my gardening trousers, a knobbly stick and a short clay completed his armament. He knew exactly the way to get to the tower, but as to what it was he hadn't the faintest idea, though wild horses wouldn't have dragged that admission from him. Meanwhile, I was ruefully reflecting on the price of tobacco and what other means of support the old rascal had apart from witless wanderers like myself. After this salutary encounter, I pursued my way in more subdued spirits, admiring the 16th century half-timbered houses at Alcaston, Wolverton and Harton. This part of Shropshire is exceptionally rich in them. Coughing discreetly to avoid startling a man immersed in his Sunday paper, squeezing into the hedge to allow a farm wagon to pass, and generally conducting myself as if fully appreciative of my privilege in being alive and a wheel in God's own country on such a glorious morning. Twice I essayed diversions to the top of the edge, one from just above Harton, a sort of primitive hollow way, completely roofed by its hedgerows, the other beyond the church at Eton, and twice the glutinous mud of Wenlock shale made me think better of it. In your armchair, those map-marked roadlets look irresistible. On the spot, you find they are what W.P. Cook would have called sewers. Thus, with comparatively clean shoes, I came to the Plough at Wall-under-Hayward, and over my aperitif pint enjoyed a running crossfire in the bar. Old Jones had his baler on fire, says one. Was it a wooden one then? Asks another, and quick as lightning comes the answer, no, an iron one, of course. That was as quick as he must have been when he shot 190 rabbits in 4 hours. After lunch, I took the road to the top of the edge up Roman Bank, stopping on the way to inspect Rusbury Church, but I couldn't find the fragment of Roman concrete said to be embedded in the Saxon herringbone work. Those who collect memorial inscriptions would here find a good one, to Mary Lewis, aged 4 years, who died of burns in 1836. Unconsidered trifles, perhaps you would call them, but not so the hen's egg I found on top of the bank just round the corner. And that, said I, carefully stowing it in my saddlebag side pocket, is a sure good conduct stripe for yours truly when he gets back home in the late hours tonight. That Sunday was Harvest Thanksgiving, and the church was decorated as only a country church can be for such an occasion. Apples, pears, onions, cauliflowers, cucumbers, tomatoes, potatoes, dahlias, purple daisies, marigolds, honesty, sprays of Virginia creeper, sheaves of oats and wheat at the side of the chancel steps, and, most poignant, a model corn stack a foot high and properly thatched. Up to now, my Wenlock weekend had been blessed with many good things. Fine weather, beautiful country, food and drink when required, a well-behaved bicycle, entertaining people. Yet it seemed to lack that bit of extra spice which distinguishes one from another, something to give it individuality. I got that something good and proper when I turned north from Roman Bank to follow that little road along the crest of the edge to the youth hostel at Wilderhope. Many cyclists weekend at that most romantic of hostels, but it seems none of them ever thinks of traversing the old Ridgeway, or I should not have found it as I did. I ought to have been armed with a mattock, a beekeeper's mask, and a long pair of leather gauntlets. We protest loudly about tracts closed to us by unsympathetic farmers and landowners. What about all those that we are allowing Dame Nature to close up without lifting a foot to stop her? We shall have to start another society, and I must think of a name for it. Briars were my chief antagonists. They hung like pythons over the way, 20 foot long. They clawed at my pedals and scratched my face. Giant thistles pricked my legs and adorned my backside with stickers. Nettles stung me and thorn trees pulled my hair. And I was as happy as a sandboy. It's the sort of game to keep you young. After a look over Wilderhope, a 17th century stone mansion in fine condition, I made experiences when I met my motoring and walking colleagues around that BBC microphone. A cyclist has a great advantage in such matters.